All right, so let's go ahead and get started on the assembly of our spooky little pumpkin lantern trio here. So the three pumpkins, we've separated them so you can make them individually if you want. Obviously, they're gonna look best if you do them as a trio. And I'm actually only gonna show the assembly of one of the pumpkins because aside from the height, everything else is exactly the same as far as the assembly, with the exception of the small one. The small one only has a face on the front and the back. There's no caption on the side, so you're using less vellum. But that's really the only difference. So let's go ahead and get started here. Now, I already did a little bit of pre-prep, and I'll go through everything that I did. I did that just to kind of save time in the video. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to grab our main pieces here, and we're going to pre-assemble and get our vellum in place. So the first thing you want to do is you want to go ahead and fold everything at the score marks here, just to get that nice and prepped. Okay, we're going to work on this flat when possible and as much as possible, and it goes together. It's pretty easy. It's not really that difficult, and I'll show you every little step of the way here how to get this guy together. So we're just creasing the main part of our little luminary or lantern, whatever you want to call it. Okay, and for the large pumpkin here, what we're going to do is we're going to put the yellow vellum over the face and the red vellum over the caption. Now, on the medium-sized pumpkin, it's going to be the opposite. It's going to be red on the face, yellow on the caption. Okay, so just remember that. And then on the small one, it's going to be yellow on the face. And actually, that is just our suggestion. You're obviously welcome to do it however you want and use whatever color vellum you want. Okay, so with that said, let's go ahead and get our vellum in place here. So I've got the inside part here, my texture is on the outside, and I'm just gonna get my glue ready here. And we're gonna go ahead and just kind of get a visual on where this vellum is gonna sit. You wanna make sure that you have the entire cutout covered up, in which case we can go ahead and begin just throwing down some dots here. I'm gonna work the perimeter first. Try to get it as close to the cutouts as possible, but not too close to where if by chance you get a large amount of glue and when you put your vellum down, it doesn't cause it to smear. Okay, so just put that down, ensuring that you've got the entire cutout covered. Okay, and whoops, I kind of smeared it a little bit. That looks good. Okay, so that's kind of what that should look like. And that is already looking pretty cool. Okay, so then we're gonna cover up the little boo. Okay, and again, with this one here, you could probably just do a line all the way around, get some on the inside, just like that. And just cover up the cutouts. Make sure that you don't have any of the cutouts sticking out. And it kind of helps if you lift it up a little bit to let some light shine through there, just to ensure that you've got that nice and covered. Okay, so that looks great. And then we can move on over to the other one. And again, yellow on the face, red on the caption. And I'm gonna go ahead and work my dots around the perimeter. And a few dots here in the little nooks and crannies. So the whole concept behind this look is to kind of make it look like the face was sort of etched out of a piece of tree bark or wood. I think Ron did a really good job of capturing that aesthetic. Now, you can see that I got it on there a little crooked, but that's okay. No one's really gonna see the inside of that, so don't worry too much about that. Okay, so let's get our glue on the boo. And just make sure that we got that hole cut out, covered up. Perfect. All right. So that looks great. I'm gonna go ahead and flatten this out and put it down on my table like so. Okay. And the next step in getting this thing assembled, I'm just gonna move this out of the way for a second, is our little panels here. Now, as you can see on these panels, I've actually gone ahead and inked the edge, and then I ran it through my embossing folder with, or my embossing machine with a, it's actually a 5x7 wood grain texture embossing folder. I believe that's by Doris. Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and get this glued down. Now, one thing you'll notice is that this border, and this is by design, it is not completely even all the way around. And we wanted to do that to kind of make it a little more interesting. But visually, when you go to glue this down, these little areas down here, these areas are pretty much even, okay? So as long as you glue this down and you've got a pretty decent, well, a pretty even border up at the top here and at the bottom, the rest of it will fall into place, okay? So let's just go ahead and do this real quick so you can see. I'm gonna go ahead and get my glue on here. And we gotta work kind of quick. And actually, you know what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna try to get glue on this whole thing, although it may start to dry before I'm able to. And if that's the case, we can always go in and lift up these center parts and adhere them after the fact. I think I'm gonna be okay, but if not, these little middle parts, we can always go back in and apply some extra glue. So I'm kind of holding it like this, okay, and I want to go ahead and line up the top, try to get that border nice and even on top, and then nice and even on the bottom, and then the rest of it should kind of just fall into place like that. Okay, so that's kind of what you want it to look like. You want it to be, it just gives it a really cool spooky look, like little shadows on a old oak tree or something like that. Okay, but check out how cool that looks, especially with that texture. So that looks awesome. And then also we've got this piece here. Okay, that's gonna go right there. I'm gonna go ahead and put glue on the back of this. And I may have actually run this through the embossing folder the wrong way, but that's okay. It's still gonna look cool. You wanna probably keep the more prominent looking ridges coming out at you. And just do your best to get that nice and aligned. And just push that down and get that glued down. And again, I did some inking here. I'm gonna show you my little inking process. It's pretty straightforward. Nothing, it's not rocket science. And then we've got a couple little pieces here for the O's. Okay, these should all be pretty much the same size for the O's. Yeah, and they are. I don't think it really matters. Grab two O's, or two little circles for the O's, and then two of the pieces for the B. Okay, and we're just gonna get these little pieces glued down. Probably want the larger one at the bottom because the B, the little bubble on the B looks a little bit more pronounced on the bottom. And then you've got the O's there. So let's just go ahead and put a little bit of glue on the back of this. Just pop that right in the middle. And now you may want to actually, these little circular pieces in this B, if you are going to emboss this, go ahead and run these through the embossing folder too, just to kind of keep the whole design consistent. So This is actually, I'm going to be putting together another side here, so that'll give me an opportunity to see what that looks like. It's still going to look cool either way. Okay, so there is one side, or one half, I should say. Okay, so we've got that all complete here, and we can go ahead and I will show you some inking here. Okay, so I have my, this is a rhubarb stalk color here, and I'm just going to grab this panel here, this boo panel, and I'm again using my little Tim Holtz ink applicator felt. I really love this lately for laying down ink. It gives me a really nice soft gradient, and then if I push down harder, it does make it more pronounced. So I get the best of both worlds, and I love how blended everything looks. And I'm just kind of scraping it along the side, the edge of the paper, and then it's just a little bit of that ink that's hitting the surface. So it's not like I'm drawing on top of the surface. I'm kind of going at an angle to just to leave a little bit of that ink on the paper. I don't want to overdo it. Okay. And just kind of dab it every now and then. Get a little bit more ink on there. After I dab it, I go a little bit lighter because there is more ink on there. And if I push too hard, it'll look a little uneven, which is actually okay. It probably would look pretty cool and even more freaky and creepy and distressed, but I don't know, I like to keep things pretty even if possible. Okay, so that just really softens the edges. Well, I mean, it makes them more contrasty right on the edge, but it's almost like the color, it almost blends the color, and it takes this tangerine color that we have and gives it a whole different look. It's almost like there's 3 shades of color on here now, or 4 shades of color because of this inking. Okay, so I did that to all 4 sides of, as far as the panels go, of our little luminary here. And I am just going to add a little bit more up here in this corner. It makes me think of the vignette on a camera lens. The camera lens naturally produces like little darker areas along the outer perimeter of an image. Okay, I even took and kind of just lightly brushed the little hole for the O and the B, just so it doesn't feel left out. Just give it a little bit of love. And it's just kind of, I don't know, it just reminds me of some of the stuff that I see at one of my favorite stores out here in Geneva called Country Naturals. They have a lot of really cool, vintagey looking stuff. And this is kind of, okay, so anyway, so we've got this panel. We need to run this through the embossing folder. While I do that, I'm going to grab these 2 pieces and these pieces for the B and run that through the embossing folder. The only other thing that we inked on this were these little pieces here. I inked and also ran these through the embossing folder. So here, let me actually show you that process real quick. It's pretty straightforward. Let me grab that really quick here. So I've got my Sizzix Big Shot, okay, and here is the Doris embossing folder. Let me grab my boo. Now I'm kind of feeling this, and this is the texture side that I want. This is kind of like the reverse. So I'm just gonna pop my little piece in here. And I've got enough room for these other pieces, so I'm going to stick those in there. And it's probably not going to be much for these little pieces, but it will keep it consistent. So if you are embossing, emboss these little pieces too, just to keep everything consistent. Okay, I'm gonna sandwich it between my plates here, just like that. Put it on my little tray. Put that down, feed it through, and oops, there we go. And just like that. Get this out of the way. There we go. And there's our beautifully embossed paper. Get this out of the way here. Okay. All right, so let's grab this. And again, we're gonna adhere that right there. So flip that over and get your glue down on your panel. Nice and thin, don't need to go crazy with the glue. All right. And just visually keep your eye on the black area surrounding the letters, making sure that you're not exposing too much of it. I mean, a little bit's gonna peek through probably, just because of the margin of error as far as the cutting machines go. And that's quite all right. Okay, so that looks good. And then I may as well hit these with a little bit of ink just to keep it consistent. Okay, just throw a little bit of glue on the back here. So that is for our first O. Just like that. Grab our next O. Hit it with a little ink. Okay. And then we'll glue our B down. And the main body of this thing will pretty much be done. And then we just work on our lid and our base. And before you know it, one of these will be done. And again, you can do these individually. I'm gonna do all three, obviously, because we created all three and things are a lot cuter in threes, more interesting. And I think it'll just look way more festive too if you've got a few of them hanging out together. Okay, throw that B on there. And last but not least, this little piece here, just gonna hit it with some ink. Give it a nice little rustic look. And just a little tiny bit of glue. You don't need much. And throw that down. There we go. Okay, so let's take a look here. Let's get this on here now. Real quick, just a little tip here. If by chance you've got a little bit of paper that you didn't successfully glue down, grab a tool like a pick-me-up or a spatula, or I've used razor blades in the past. Put down a little bit of glue, put it on the fine, well, you could do it on either side. I'm doing it on the flat side. I'm just kind of dabbing a little bit of glue on one side of it, just like that. Slide it right underneath there, rub it up against the underside of that piece, and then just push it down. And that'll make sure that it sticks. Okay, so again, and this applies to all three sizes here. As you're putting this down, pay attention to these ends here, these little rounded ends, okay? The little border should be pretty even right towards the end of these. And then on the inside, it may not be even, but again, that is by design, just to kind of give it a little more interest. So as you're putting this down, pay attention to the top and the bottom as far as the little black border showing through. And as long as that looks fairly even, the rest of it will fall in place for you and you'll get the desired look. Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and get my glue spread out on this as nicely as I can and work these little inner areas. Try to work kind of quick. There we go. This area here, just like that. Okay, I don't know why I just like to put this sideways. Okay, and again, focus on the top section first. Make sure that that looks pretty even at the top. Put this down, check the bottom, and then the rest will fall into place. Okay, if you got a little bit of glue popping out of there, that's totally fine. Okay, and there we go. Okay, so we have our two sides done here, and now you can take a look here at the difference between these two. I don't think it's that noticeable as far as the inking on these little things, but I don't know. If you really stare at it, you can see the difference, but either way is fine. Okay, so I think we're done with our ink here for now. You can go ahead and put this to the side. And at this point, we can go ahead and begin putting this thing together, okay? Because all that's really left to do at this point is put our top, our base and our lid together. So to put this together, we're just gonna connect it using this tab here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and get my glue on this tab. Okay, and then work a little bit out to the edge. I'm going to fold this down because I am going to take my finger and run that glue right up to the edge there. Okay. And then right on the top of it, just wipe off any excess that might have gotten up there. Okay, and then take this piece while it's still flat and lay it on top of the other piece. And match that up nicely. There you go. I had a lot of glue that shot out here, but when it's still semi-wet, you can kind of rub it off when you're using the Scotch Quick Dry. Okay, give it a few seconds to get its initial hold. And then you can actually flip it over on top of itself and fold it down onto itself. And then kind of run your finger along these tabs here and see if they're right on top of each other. And if they are, that means that you've got it pretty much perfectly aligned. Okay, so that's perfect. Let's give that a few minutes to set. And in the meantime, you can go ahead and fold this over, because what we're going to do is put glue on this tab and close this up. I'm a little wild with my glue today. Get that glue out to the edge. There we go. That's a lot better than the first time. Practice makes perfect. Okay, so I'm just going to put that down, fold this over. It should connect perfectly. And a little bit of glue up there, that's okay though. The lid's going to cover that up, so it's not a big deal. Okay, so I'm just pushing that down, letting that glue set. Okay, there we go. All right, so our lantern is pretty much complete. Now you can see here, I did a pretty bad job of gluing that closed. There's a nice little gap there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put a little bit of glue down on just any surface and just dab a little bit with my pick-me-up tool and lift it up just a tad. Smear some glue to the inside of that part. You don't want a lot, just a little bit's fine. Just get it in there. And then go ahead and push it down and hold it down until it sets. And that'll clean that right up and make it look nice and seamless for you. And if you've got any other areas that you feel you could have done better on, sometimes that pick-me-up tool is a little bit too thick. So I will grab a razor blade and just put a little dot of glue on the underside of one you know, the razor blade and just pop it right under there. And just spread some of that glue out underneath the part that I was not happy with, and then just really give it some force and push it down to get it to stay, and then it'll look nice and seamless for you. Okay, so this thing is pretty much assembled as far as the base of the lantern goes. Okay, now what we're going to do is we're going to put our bottom on. So what I would recommend doing is finding the side that you love the most. This is the front for me. I like this. I did the best job on this side here. So I'm going to go ahead and get some glue on this tab here. And then I'm going to work that glue out to the edge. And I'm going to spread that thin and try to get it right up to the edge there. Just like that. And grab this little square here and line that up as precisely as possible. I've got my thumbs on top, I've got fingers underneath, and I'm just kind of squeezing. Okay, so that looks good. You can put that flat down on your surface and push down. Okay, and then what we're going to do is we're going to put glue on these remaining tabs here and close that up. Okay, so try to get a little bit in the center. And then work a little line out to the edge. Okay, flare these out a little bit so that as you go to close it, grabs a little more surface area. And just go ahead and run your finger along the perimeter. And you can actually put this down flat on your table. Maybe grab a dowel. You can actually get your hand in there and just push down from the inside. Okay. Now there's our base. Okay. Now again, you can go back in if there are any areas that you are not happy with. Grab your razor blade and dab a little bit of glue on one side and just squeeze it in there and get it nice and perfect. And just hold it down in the areas that you're not completely satisfied with. It's just a really quick way to fix things and make them perfect. I've seen a lot of perfect projects on our Facebook page over the last few months. And you guys, I bet you are really taking your time and rocking these projects and getting everything nice and glued. Seams are perfect. There we go. Okay, so there is the lantern, okay, and again, all that's left to do at this point is put together our base and our lid, and then there's a little flower, a decorative flower that we're going to put on there, so we'll go ahead and get started with that here in just a second. Okay, so we have the main structure of our large lantern put together here. All that's left to do is put our base and our lid together. So what you need to construct the base is this piece here, and then the bottom to put that on. We've got a little burlap pattern that we're going to put on top, and then we've got these black overlays. They're checkered, that are going to go along the sides. And let's go ahead and just dive right in here. You want to go ahead and begin by just folding everything at the score marks. Okay, and what we're going to do is we are going to glue the little triangles to the neighboring section there. So go ahead and just get a nice even amount of glue onto your little triangle. Try to get it right out to the edge and just push and hold that down with your finger. And just squeeze until it sets. Try to make sure that it's all nice and perpendicular. Okay. And just be patient with that. You can actually put it down on your surface too to add a little bit more pressure and force to get that little corner to stick nicely for you. Okay, and then you can go ahead and move on to the next little triangle. Get your glue on there, work it out to the edge, and then fold that over. You can move this tab out of the way, that might help to get your finger in there nicely. And we can put that down on our surface to really push. I'm actually pushing down from up here too, just to make sure that we get every little, there we go, that looks nice. You can see that. Okay, so moving right along here, move that out of the way for a second. And just get our glue on the triangle here. Get it out to the edge. Fold that back and bring that in. I got some ink on me. I didn't even realize that happened. Okay, I'm just gonna put that down on my surface and just make sure it's nice and lined up. I can push down from here too. Get a little extra leverage on that. Okay, that looks nice. And last but not least, our final little triangle here. Get our glue out to the edge. And just peel that back. Get it nice and aligned. And just push that and hold that down until it sets. There we go. And that looks great. And then we're going to go ahead and fold these back in and go ahead and pick a side that you think you did your best work on. This is the front for me. I like how I did that. And we're going to go ahead and get glue on the large part of this and then work a little line out to the edge. I'm going to spread that thin and all the way out to the edge. I'm going to grab this piece here and get that nice and aligned. Make sure it's nice and centered. And then just push down, let it get its initial hold. Scoot that over just a tad. And then I can put that flat on my table here and push down from the inside to really get that to stick. Okay, and that is giving me a nice clean seam there. Okay, and next, we'll go ahead and close this up. Try to get that glue out to the edge. I'm going to smear that with my finger. Nice and thin, you don't want to overdo it. Okay, spread that out. And again, if you don't get a perfectly clean seam, you can always go in and use that little tip to clean it up. Angle these up a little bit so that as you're pushing down, grabs more surface area, and gently close that up. Run your finger along the perimeter here. If you need to, just kind of tuck that tab, or that wall, I should say, in a little bit. Make sure you get that all in place, and you got a nice little square base for our lantern. Okay. Pick the side that you think looks the best. And now, again, if you have a little area that you're not totally satisfied with, just grab your razor blade or your pick-me-up or a spatula, lift it up a little bit, put a little extra glue under there, and then just push that down and hold it until it really sticks. And it'll look nice and flawless for you. I will be honest and say that Usually have to do that once or twice a project just to get it to look perfect, but that's just the nature of paper, and it's totally fine. Okay, so that's that. Now, what we can go ahead and do is we can put our little burlap top on. Okay, that's just going to get glued right on top. Now, this is a really thin print. Okay, so I'm going to be very, very, very sparse with this glue, and I'm probably going to spread it real thin if I get any large areas of glue, because it's really thin. I'm going to say this is maybe like 45-pound stock here. It's really thin. Not a big fan of these really thin papers, but for this project, it's exactly what we needed, so we're going with it. And get that glued right on top. Try to get it nice and centered. And your finger along the edges. The edges are probably the most important to get those nice and seamless. Okay, so that looks really cool. All right, and then all that's left to do is put our little overlays on, and those go on just like that. Okay, so you want to go ahead, and I would probably try to get that glue to cover as much of this as you can, nice and thin. And then here, you definitely want to get the glue out to the edges, like that. And just pop that right on. Oops, I guess one side is a little bit wider than the other. So make sure you're putting it on the right side. Okay. And actually, you know what? One side's not wider than the other. This is perfectly square, so I guess that was like an optical illusion to me or something. I'm not really sure how that happened. But anyway, just gonna go ahead and continue with these overlays here. Again, the most important thing here is just to make sure that you're getting glue out to the edge of that half diamond. Okay, and then just get that right in place. And the end of this is going to extend just like a hair beyond the orange part. And that's just so that when these two join here, it's more seamless. Okay, so it is going to extend just a hair. But when you get the other piece on there, it's going to look nice and seamless, and you're not going to see any orange showing through there. Okay, so far so good. We'll get the last one on here, and then we can go ahead and begin working on our lid. And I'll show you how the flower goes together, and we'll be all done here. Alexa, set studio to 85 degrees.
The AC is set to 85.
Okay, so again, just making sure that I'm working that glue out to the edge of that half diamond. Get that in place. Scoot it over just a tad. There we go. That looks good. That looks nice. Nice little base there. Okay, and last but not least, our final little piece. I think this is pretty self-explanatory, but I don't really want to miss any steps here. So again, there's 3 pumpkins in this trio here, and they're all going to go together the same way. This base is exactly the same size for all 3. The only difference is the height and the caption or the patterns on the various sizes. The small one just doesn't have the captions on it. It's just the face on the front and the back. So, Okay, there we go. Get that right on there. Corners should meet nicely. There we go. Okay, so we have our cute little base here all put together. And we can, at this point, we can go ahead and glue that down to the base and let that set while we're working on the lid. Okay, so what you want to go ahead and do is just put some glue on the bottom of this thing. Especially out to the edges. And I'm going to spread that kind of thin, make sure that I'm getting it out to the edge. Using one finger to spread it, the other fingers to kind of clean up any mess or anything. And then just do your best to get that nice and centered. You might want to stand up and just make sure that you've got a nice even border going all the way around this piece here. Okay, and just push down gently. You don't want to push down too much because you might crush it. Okay, and just kind of run your finger along the inside there. All right, and then we can put that off to the side and let that dry, okay, while we work on our lid. Oh, now one thing I forgot to mention is that there is an additional liner piece. This piece has a little L cut into it, and that is to be put inside of the lantern. And that just kind of gives it a little additional stability. So just put a little bit of glue on the bottom of that, just pop it right in there, press it down, and just kind of work your finger in there, and that'll make sure that it sits nicely for you. Okay, so here is what we have so far, and all we need to do at this point is put our lid together. So I've got my pieces here, and we can go ahead and begin by assembling the main structure. And actually, before we do that though, what we want to do is we can go ahead and, well, let's do that after we put this together actually. So you want to go ahead and fold everything at the score marks here, just to get everything all ready to take its final form. Just go around and crease everything at the score marks. And just like we did with the base, we're going to put glue on our little triangular tabs here and glue them to their neighbor. Okay, I want to get that glue right out to the edge, and just go ahead and hold that in place while it sets. Just be patient. This one is a little bit easier to work with for some reason. I think it's because it doesn't have the large tabs hanging off of the little wall structure. So I'm just getting glue on that little tab there and getting that in place. Just pushing with my thumb. My thumb's inside there. I'm just pushing in, and then I'm using this finger here to push down, kind of sandwich it. Okay. All right, moving right along. Next tab here. Get your glue. Get it right out to that edge there. Okay. And just sandwich that and hold it until it's set. There we go. And last but not least, final little triangular tab here. Get our glue right up to the edge. Tuck it in. And voila. Just make sure that you've got that nice and lined up. Okay. And just hold that in place. If you want, you can put that down on your surface to use your table as additional leverage there. It's totally up to you how you want to do it. Okay. And then we created this nice little lip here so that it just looks nice and it will hug the actual top of our lantern. And there's a little score mark there to help indicate where you need to place your glue. So keep your glue on one side there and just kind of put the glue on there and sandwich that between your fingers to get it to stick like that. Okay, and be patient with this piece here. There's a little bit of resistance there. Just squeeze nicely, get that in there. Don't need a lot of glue, just a tiny little bit. And just squeeze that in place. Hold it until it really gets a good hold. There we go. Lift that up. And now with this one here, you may want to just put glue on both sides here on this last piece because it may be a little difficult to lift up that other piece after you get this one down without pulling it or yanking it away and having it come undone. Okay, so that glue should be just fine. There we go. Okay, so that looks nice. And then we've got this little piece here. That's just to kind of strengthen and clean it up and make it look real nice. So go ahead and get a nice line of glue all the way around. And then I'm going to go around one more time with hopefully a thinner line right out to the edge. And I am going to smear that with my finger just to make sure that it really gets out there. I may need to go back in and adjust and fix that if it doesn't sit perfectly, but that's quite all right. So just pop that right on there and get it glued down. Just run your finger along the perimeter and push down like so. Okay. And then you can even kind of squeeze, almost like you're making a pie, to get that in place. Okay, all right, so the majority of this lid is done. We've got a little top part to it and then the little handle, and that's pretty straightforward. So actually what we can do at this point, we can get this glued down. Okay, again, this little burlap piece is a very, very, very thin piece of paper, so I'm going to be very delicate with the glue here. I don't want it to warp the paper or be visible through the paper, but at the same time, I do want to make sure that I'm getting my glue out to the edge. It's the most important part aesthetically. Okay, and I'm just going to pop that right on top. Okay, and I'm just running my finger along the inside here just to make sure that everything's nice and flush in there. Then I can flip it over on top of my table and push down from the inside to get that to stick, and that looks really nice. Okay, all right, so that just leaves this piece here, and this is pretty easy as well. Very similar to what we did with the other lid. We've got some triangular tabs here, so you want to go ahead and get everything folded. Now these tabs here, we're going to actually glue them to the inside of this tab, or that portion of the lid, and that's going to keep this thing in place and make it look nice and seamless. Okay, so we're just going to go around just like we did the first time and put glue on this little tab here, glue it to its neighbor, and we're dealing with much less surface area here, so you need less glue, and with that, less time for it to really bond. It should go pretty quick. Okay, the more glue you use, the longer you're going to be sitting around waiting for it to dry. You don't need that much glue. And actually, I think sometimes too much glue is bad because it takes forever to dry. It can make a mess, and I'm gonna go out on a limb and say it just doesn't hold as well. You really don't need that much. Okay, let's get that spread out nicely. Get that on there. Okay. And last but not least, got that little triangular tab in there. Get our glue on there, spread it nice and thin. Okay, close that up. Wipe off any little glue that may have spilt out. Okay, all right, so there's that. And now what we're gonna do is we're gonna put this little burlap piece right on top here. We're gonna put our little decorative panels on the side, and then we've gotta put our little handle in place too, which is actually very easy to do. And I will show you that. Okay, so let's get our little burlap piece on there. Just make sure that you're aligning the slit nice and perfect. Getting it right over that slit so that it doesn't obstruct our handle. Okay. And I'm actually going to put it on the other way. I think it fits better that way. There we go. And I can just flip that over and push down from the inside. Okay, so that looks nice. Okay, let's get our little panels here. And we're going to put glue on the back. And just get those glued on to the side here. Just like that. And I've got this little part here that's lifting up on me. So going back to my little technique where you just get a little bit of glue on my razor or on your pick-me-up, on your spatula, and just adding glue where necessary to make sure that everything's sitting nicely. Okay, so we've got 3 more of these pieces to put on. Our little handle goes on afterwards, and then we are pretty much done here. Now this piece here, it's so small and delicate that the embossing folder kind of ripped it, but I can still get it glued down and held in place, so it's fine, and you don't really notice it. So that is just fine and dandy. All right, one more here. Just try to get that nice and centered on here. Nice and even. There we go. Okay. There we go. Okay, so the top tier of our lid is done, which just leaves the little handle part. And what we're going to do here is we're going to bend these tabs, okay? And we're only going to put glue on this part here, not on the tab. Okay, we're going to glue these back to back. Okay, so it should fit perfectly. That little cutout there in the center is identical on both pieces when they're back to back. Okay, so that looks good. We can lay that flat. We do have 2 little burlap pieces that are going to go right on top of that. So get your glue on whatever pattern paper you decided to use, or whatever solid colored paper you decided to use. And the center doesn't have a border. It should fit perfectly, and then just leave a little nice border around the perimeter there. Okay. And now what we're going to do with this little handle piece is we're going to feed these tabs through this slit like that. Okay, and then we're going to glue them to the inside of this piece so that it looks like that. Okay, so all we need to do is just put a nice thin little line of glue on one of those tabs and just hold it like that until it sets. Give that a few seconds, And then go ahead and repeat on the other side. It's really thin, don't need a lot. And get that glued in place, and that should stand up nice and pretty for us. Okay, so there's our little top with the handle. And what we're gonna do is we're gonna pop this through like this. There we go. And then we're gonna glue, just like we did that handle, we're gonna glue these tabs to the inside of this piece here. Okay, so you just wanna kind of squeeze that between your fingers and get that glued in place. Just like that. And move on to the next one. I'd probably put the glue more towards the outside of the tab, not towards the inside. Okay. Oh, and we also have to put our little diamonds on there as well. I guess I totally forgot about that. Okay, just get that glued in. Okay, and last one. I'm actually just going to put the glue right on the orange part instead. Doesn't really matter. Okay. All right, so there is our lid. Okay, and just like we did with the base, you're going to put your little checkers on here. You're not your checkers, your diamonds. Okay, so I'll show you one here. We've already done this, so I don't want to be redundant, but just putting a little bit of glue on each one here. And then again, the most important thing is to make sure that you get that glue right out to the very edge of these half diamonds, just to make sure that those stick nicely. Okay, and get that nice and centered. And remember, the little edge pieces, they're gonna hang off just a tiny little bit so that when you put the other one that's adjacent to it on there, they like meet up and create like a seamless little corner. Okay, so let's just get one more on here. Might as well spend some time with you here. So I'm really excited to see what this is going to turn out to look like. I have a feeling they're going to be really cool, especially when they're all together and lit up. Tomorrow is the first day of fall, and I think it's about time for me to really ramp up my Halloween decorating, because I don't want to run out of time this year. So I'm just going to get it done. Even if I look like the craziest person on the block, I'm okay with that. So hopefully you guys are, and we have a lot of fans, a lot of people watch our videos. If you have a YouTube account, would love if you subscribe to the channel. It's a personal goal of mine to get 100,000 followers on YouTube. That would really make my day. So if you love our products and you want to be supportive, hit that little subscribe button on the bottom or on our YouTube page. I'd be very, very happy and appreciative if you would subscribe. Okay, so last one is going down, and that will complete the assembly of our lantern. And there's a little floral element that we've included just to kind of give this a pretty little touch. Okay, so there is our lid. Let's take a look and see what that looks like when it's all together. Really cool, really cool. Okay, so let's take a look at the flower real quick. Okay, so we do have a little floral element here, and I'm gonna grab a dowel so that I can curl these leaves in, not leaves, petals, I should say. I don't know why I do that. I almost use those interchangeably. So I'm just kind of curling these in. I'm gonna do that for all of them just to kind of give them some life so they're not just flat. Okay, and then you can kind of just scrunch them in like that. That might be a little bit too much for that layer. And I'm just gonna repeat with this layer here. I'm just kind of pinching it between my finger and the dowel and then rolling it so that it nice and evenly rolls up on the dowel, just to kind of train it and give it a little more life. And I'm just gonna kind of squeeze it together like that. Just put a little bit of life into these. So I'm just gonna put just a little dot of glue on that. And I want to offset it so that the petals are not right on top of each other. So that petal there is in the middle of the two petals there. Okay, get it nice and centered, just like that. And then grab your next one and just roll it. Give it a little bit of life, kind of scrunch it together a little bit. Get a little dot of glue on there. And again, offset that in the center, making sure that the petals look offset. There you go. And last but not least, this one here, I don't even know if I'm gonna be able to curl this one. Well, actually, yeah. It's better to do this on a dowel just to kind of give it a round shape, because if you try to just bend it, it might just look creased and then it doesn't look as cute. There we go. And just a tiny little dot there. Pop that in the center, get that nice and offset. And so we have another, so we have a little leaf element here that I'm going to train backwards. Okay, I'm just gonna kind of curl that back, maybe curl this one forward, curl that forward, and I'm gonna place it just like that, okay? And I'm gonna go ahead and glue that down. Okay, just like that. I guess it doesn't matter where it goes right now because you can always position it however you want after the fact. And then we're gonna put a little bit of raffia behind this. You know, by doing that, I kind of squish down these petals. So you wanna go back in and kind of lift these up after you get that glued down, just to kind of give this thing a little more dimension, add a little more shadow and interest behind each of these little petals. Okay, there we go, just like that. Okay, and we're gonna actually, I'm gonna pop dot that right onto the lantern here, like that. All right, so just gonna grab some raffia here. This thing's kind of out of control, but it doesn't matter because we're just gonna scrunch it together to create like a little bow-like look. And we want it to be about 4 inches wide. So here, let's kind of straighten this out. And let's get about 8 inches. Can cut it at about 8. Okay, and then just kind of bring the outside parts to the center. It's almost like you're just creating like a little bow out of all this craziness here. Okay, and just pinch it in the center so it kind of looks like that. You can flare it out then. And then just take a nice thick piece, maybe cut it, and just wrap it around the center a couple times and then tie it off. And then we're just gonna glue it, or pop dot it, or hot glue if you want to use hot glue. I'm gonna glue it to the back side of the flower and call it a day. Just tie that off. Just kind of like that. I think the wilder the better. If you've got some little loose area. Actually, you know what? I don't mind the loose areas. I think that's cool. It gives it a nice rustic, crazy feel. Okay, and we're gonna take our flower and adhere it right to the center of that. Probably gonna grab a pop dot to get that to stick. And then pop dot that to the side of, all right, let's see here. Just pop a pop dot right on the back, and it's gonna kind of sit like this. Okay, I want the leaves to kind of stick out off the side there. And so if we want to do that, kind of want it to be like this and give it that look. I'm gonna put a little, probably put a little rhinestone in the center of the flower because it's looking a little bare. And I think that pretty much can call it a day on this project. And again, remember, if you're making all three, everything I showed you in this video is exactly the same for the other two, minus the fact that one is larger, one is a little bit smaller, and then one is really, really small. Okay, and that is really the only difference. And then on the small one, you don't have a caption, you just have blank panels there. Okay, and the face goes on the front and the back. So it's pretty straightforward. Okay, and there we go. We are all done.